Gamers are not society.
This man is Michael Atkinson. To many Australian gamers, he is the final boss in the R classification censorship war. For years now, many highly anticipated games have been refused classification in Australia due to their predominantly adult content. Many Australians believe an R18+ classification for games will be the final solution in the ongoing gaming censorship war. However, one of the main reasons Australia doesn't currently have an R rating for video games is the misconception that games are for children.
As a medium, there might be potential to harm children if a game that's actually aimed at an adult audience, or has adult themes, was fallen into the hands of a child, it might have undesired effects. All media, be it books, TV, video games, photography, are more likely to have an impact on the minds of unstable individuals rather than, to say, children or adults as a whole.
These undesired effects sadly came in the 2004 murder of Stefan Pekira. Pekira was viciously beaten by a claw hammer and stabbed to death by 17-year-old Warren LeBlanc. After a copy of action horror Manhunt for PlayStation 2 was discovered in the boy's home, both Pekira's parents and the British tabloids focused their blame solely on the game, which led to it being pulled off and subsequently banned in British, Australian and New Zealand stores. It was later revealed by the police that the game had nothing to do with the crime, but was instead a drug-fueled insanity. But the damage was done. Everyone was starting to question the integrity of the games industry. The game that was once rated MA was effectively being removed from shelves because it was deemed too violent for that classification, thus beginning the crusade against an R18+ rating, as well as video games in general. Ever since that event, parents, politicians, and other worried adults have been leading a front against the rising tide of violent video games. However, a large amount of these people believe an R18+ classification on video games will help stem the flow of children being exposed to extremely violent scenarios. It worked with film, so why don't we have it here? The reason? One man, Michael Atkinson. To change the law to allow an R rating, all of Australia's Attorney Generals must agree on the decision. Up till recently, all but one of them had voted for the change, but due to Atkinson's opposal to the subject, it will not go through. He is single-handedly holding back Australia from becoming a modern country in the gaming world.
I think every artistic medium should be accessible to the masses. There are paintings out there that deal with confronting adult themes and that are considered works of art, and they talk about the messages that they have are profound and significant, and I think it's not fair that video games should be restricted to only 15-year-olds and younger.
The thing is, violence has always existed in video games. Games rated as low as G have at least one act of violence, even if it is just against a cuddly cartoon animal. There is always some sort of enemy to defeat, no matter what the subject matter. Games as cuddly as Loco Roco to as emotional as Ico, violence is always involved in some way or another. The violence the government is trying to combat is just the next step. So who is it to determine what degree of violence is allowed before it becomes too traumatizing for children? The main argument is that the acts of violence the player can commit in games destroys the psyche of the child's mind. However, the only difference between the G and MA games, in most cases, is the amount of gore present. This is a fair argument, but it is debatable. If the film and video game industries are both classified in the entertainment sector of society, why can't they be classified under the same classification system as video games? MA films are very traumatizing for children, yet no one seems to care when the latest Saw film comes out. But they fight to the bitter end when the next Grand Theft Auto game is released onto the shelves. Double standards are evident whenever the two are compared, but aren't they two of the same thing? The main difference, and certainly the main argument for this discrimination, is that the gamer is actively participating in the violence taking place on screen. The direct actions are causing the violence to happen. The only example of this happening is on the Nintendo Wii game console, with the player shaking their hands around and actually moving their body in the actions of committing the violence. The game Manhunt 2 does this, making the player actually mimic the actions such as plunging a knife into the virtual flesh of some innocent victim. Apart from that one game though, the only way for players to kill someone on screen is to press a brightly coloured button that then commits the violence. This could not further be removed from reality if they tried. Games are simply not instruction manuals for murder that many concerned parents believe. So if that reason is null and void, what reason is left? Only one, that games influence players to commit acts of violence on screen. Well, that isn't entirely accurate either. Some people play video games to blow off steam, to take their aggression out on someone who isn't real, and in a safe, controlled environment. They play games so they don't hurt innocent people, not the other way around. Michael Atkinson's arguments simply do not hold up in any given reality. There is simply no justifiable reason to hold back an R rating from the general public and the designers that make the games. Game designers are the only medium in the world where restrictions are placed on their work. Their artistic integrity is being withheld all for the sake of closure for some faithless politicians. Creative freedom is being hampered by the lack of an R rating and the limitations that are capped by the MA glass ceiling. Artists' babies are being ripped away from them and are being disemboweled by the predators in the government and then being reshaped into some sort of monster. But the question is that if the sale and distribution of R films can be controlled, why can't games? Society will always have violent people within it. It is human nature and cannot be stopped, no matter how many restrictions are put in place. By trying to justify the violence in society by blaming a nearby object is like trying to say that a murder was committed because a person ate their dinner with knives. The sooner people realise games are not just the cause of violence in the world, the sooner they can target the real perpetrators. To put it simply, an R rating is a morally sound argument, and the people holding it back are the real enemy of freedom. But until this time, we will all just have to cage our pixelated predators.